I have a new fidget toy, which I'm hoping will help our stream tonight, but also help our streams in great, because I had this. I was at Mass, which we have some pictures tonight for the Mass at Fatima, where Our Lady appeared in 1917 for several months in a row on the 13th of each month. At the end of the Mass, I had my friend who took me there translating everything for me, and there's something happens at the end, and everybody's rustling in their bags. She says they're blessing the object. The priest is going to bless objects that everybody brought, and I brought my rosary, because of course Fatima is Our Lady of the Rosary, and so we now have special energy, special electric energy with my rosary. And though I'm just going to fiddle with the beads.
We need it.
Oh my gosh, do we need it?
The frequencies are going mad.
The frequency goes going. So it's actually, Fatima, I will have to confess, was not in fact on my bucket list. I know, horrifying. Here I sit with Our Lady every week, every day, and I pray her hours every morning and such. But I have not, in my journey yet till now, been that interested in the modern apparitions.
Why is that? How can you, as a devotee of Our Lady, ignore the apparition?
Well, one, I think the thing that people do tend to remark on is she appears without her son in these images. So at Lourdes and La Salette and Lourdes and Fatima, and so she in the statues and images of her, she'll be just herself, just standing, and in both Lourdes and Fatima with the Rosary, although I think it's Fatima that's Our Lady of the Rosary, because the children are praying the Rosary when they see her, but they don't recognize her for some time. She's just sort of a lady that is just there, and I realized that actually that fit for me. There's the image that we've been using to pray on campus, although I was told later it's not Fatima, it's Lourdes, and they look alike to me because they're, again, she's in white and she's got a rosary and she doesn't have her son, so I get confused. But that I'm not good at recognizing her in that guise. I need her to have Christ with her to really think of it as Mary.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking she appeared in Egypt as well at Zaytun.
Right.
And she was there without our Lord.
And when was that? When was that?
Chronologically disabled.
Oh, okay.
Sometime in the 60s, I think.
Modernity, just modernity. We can go with that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. At some point in modern time, and she appeared to massive crowds of people. Originally, they thought that there was a person who had climbed on top of the church, who was trying to take their own life. And so people on the street started to scream, saying, "Lady, don't jump, come down." And then they realized she was hovering and it wasn't jumping. So more crowds assembled. Huge amount of Coptic Orthodox Christians, and also huge crowds of Muslims as well, who could see her. But again, without her son.
Well, so it's interesting. Fatima is, of course, Muhammad's daughter. Is that right? Yes. So Our Lady appearing at Fatima in Portugal is talk about media moments, right? Pretty. It's like, which branding are we going for there? And to say, she's speaking to the little shepherds whose tombs are there in the basilica, about Russia, but at Fatima. I do rather think Our Lady knows how to troll. For sure.
That's pretty
for
epic,
sure.
Actually.
No, but what I think I may have mentioned this before, but it's sort of necessary here that when she appears in these modern apparitions, she's doing it in this like electricity. It's light. It's the apparitions in the 19th century are very close to when the telegraph transforms our media experience, and the 1917. I mean, you're sort of in the peak of the radio coming into play. And in one of the images, in one of the apparitions, which I had to show my guides there, the images that we have at St. John Cantius, and I said, well, which one's which? Is this one? And I understand now. Lourdes has the blue sash, so you can know Lourdes by the sash. But we have another image that's an actual full statue at St. John Cantius, but it's not the usual praying hands that I've seen in more of the Fatima images. She's sort of going like this. She's kind of her power move. And indeed, my guide explained that's like beams came out of her hands.
Okay.
I'm thinking Our Lady
ultralight
is
beams.
showing us the media form in which we are now encountering the messages, the medium of the light that she has to appear in our current media format. Whereas in the Middle Ages, I mean, she appears more to the learned and the liturgically active and the, sort of trained in scriptural exegesis and meditation. Whereas in the more modern apparitions, she appears to the children and the peasants and the people in a different guise.
Scholarly class is not redundant, because obviously I can't say that because I'm talking to a scholar and you'll kill me. But you're not redundant. It's just that the medium changes the accessibility of the scholars, right?
Right.
So this is the argument where everyone talks about the institutional universities or academia being irrelevant now because we have the internet. Yet that it's not a redundancy. It's just the medium for what was previously done has changed. We've left manuscript culture. Now we're in the electric, which means that the broadcasting of that meditative mystical Christianity it's different. It's global. It's electric. So it makes sense that she would be appearing to children. Poor ultralight beams.
And like scheduled too. She comes on the 13th of the month from May to October. So now this is, again, like I said, I hadn't had Fatima on my list, and it was amazing being there. It was like Our Lady said, you must come. So I'm going to get you invited to Portugal to give a talk about art.
She got you there.
And movies, like we were talking about last time. We got more thinking about this. It's like, what kind of media experience is it to be there, and what I learned there. So Our Lady says, you need to be here. And I'm looking at it. One, it's architecturally hideous, let's just say. Particularly the modern stuff. Because it's needing to accommodate the crowds of people that come on to these feast days, the apparition days, and there is an older basilica, like an early 20th century basilica, which, again, we have some pictures later in the stream. You're gonna have to stick with us all the way to the end to get to this particular showing. The basilica is I guess 1920s, I'm guessing, right? It looks more classic. But then the more recent constructions are very brutalist architecture, or glass walls, or just a roof with glass walls. And the sculptures and imagery is very, I mean, it's quite disturbing, particularly like the crucifix in the main plaza area is very rough. So it's clearly a place of modernity, as compared with the churches that I tend to prefer, the Gothic and stained glass that we've talked about. And the most sort of ugly thing visually about it, if you go there not on one of those feast days, is the entire space in front of the basilica. This sort of hill is basically asphalted over, although it's very soft asphalt. Why, you ask? have they covered this whole thing over? Well, it's because people kneel and then creep across the space, right, on their knees. So it's a penitential way now. And in the movie we saw at the conference, you can see the people, they put little pads on their knees and they creep, 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 creep. And I think it's still kind of hard on your knees, but it's like, how do you accommodate that number of people into this prayer space? It's a challenge for, I mean, the neighboring community, because there's like hotels and gift shops with all those statues, and then the space itself is basically open to the sky, but it will fill with people and candles once a month every year for the summer.
Yeah, so it's a bit like a festival town, like Woodstock. Not, normal life most of the time, and then for this grand event full of crowds that are there and kind of adoration, and turn the place upside down, and then they leave and come back again.
Interesting you mentioned Woodstock, which is, of course, how like or unlike is Woodstock to this prayer place? Thinking about mass adoration in modernity, and the kind of creepiness of seeing so many people so wrapped up in a practice, an event. The difference, of course, being that at Fatima, it's, well, interestingly, the basilica that's there now, which has, I realized I put the wrong pictures because I wasn't going to talk about the buildings, but here I am talking about the buildings. It's very white. The stone is very white, and it gleams when the sun lands on it, which is quite beautiful. But that is not, in fact, the focus of where the apparitions were. The apparitions were down the hill by this little chapel where there's another prayer space and an altar for mass. The chapel where the apparitions were is basically the size of a closet. It's tiny, and there's a tree next to it, and the apparition was not in the tree but by this little chapel. So it's like the focus is off, even in the built place where people come to pray. I suppose I also, and I think this is appropriate to our theme for tonight, I find these modern prayer places, it's like there are too many people, and it's the sort of thing that ends up easily ridiculed by certain of our friends on the internet who might see this as idolatry. Although it's not in fact focused on a statue, which is interesting, because medieval pilgrimages to Marian shrines like Montserrat or I forgot some of the others. Well, like Saint-Foy-à-Conques is a statue, but it's not a Marian shrine. Or Comadure, right? Are on about images, right? So if you saw all those people creeping up the hill, and they were at Montserrat, they couldn't creep up the hill, it's very steep, but and you saw them focusing all of their attention on this throne of wisdom, this statue, you could say that's straight up idolatry, because there's this idol, there's this image that is the focus of their attention. They're not even there's no necessity to have a imaginative engagement or a contemplative reflection, because there's the statues. At Montserrat, for example, is focused on a statue. Okay, at Fatima, there's statues everywhere, but the devotion is not to a statue. It's to the memory of this vision that the first the little shepherds had, and then when the sun danced on October 13th, 1917, everybody had. So
yeah, so basically it's a commemorative statue. It's not actually an idol. Is what you're saying,
right? There's no so there's lots of imagery, and there's a building up there at the top, but that's not actually the focus of the creeping. It's the memory of her appearance that is the attention.
So like a lot of Protestants would say, you're creeping for Mary, you're making her into a goddess. Right. Why are Catholics creeping in repentance on a site that the mother of the Lord has appeared at? Right. Why are they repenting when she's been there? Instead of what the Protestants would say, well, it's not Jesus there, so why are you crawling on your hands and knees for a woman?